Okay, today we are going to introduce function notation, and we're going to do that through the lens of looking at a function as a machine. Okay, so we have a machine, we put input into the machine, and then the function gives us an output. Okay, so we're going to use this y equals 3x plus 2 as our example. Okay, so typically our input is x. And we can see that, we have 3x plus 2. So our input is our x value. That's what we're going to put into the machine. Okay, when we put that into the machine, what's going to happen to it? So the first thing that's going to happen to x is we're going to multiply by 3. Okay, after we do that, we're going to add 2. And then we get our output, or our y value. Okay, so input is x. We put it in the machine. The machine does the work and gives us our output, which is y. Okay, when we talk about function notation, we're still talking about the same process. It's just the notation is different. Okay, so when we think about looking at this second machine, we no longer have y equals 3x plus 2. We have f of x equals 3x plus 2. Okay, so our input is still x. We're going to put x into the machine. We're going to multiply x by 3. We're going to add 2. And we still get our output. Only this time we're calling the output f of x. Okay, it's a different name, still means the same thing. It's a different notation. Okay, and all that means is f is a function of x. Okay, and it might not always be f. It could be g, h, m. It doesn't matter what the letters are. The notation means function of x. Okay, so now we're going to look at a more specific example here where we're going to evaluate. And this is what our lesson is about today. We're evaluating using function notation. Okay, so if we want to find f of 4, okay, you'll notice that 4 is replacing the x. So if we look here, we see f of x, and up here we're told to find f of 4. So what this means is substitute 4 in for x. Okay, so 4 is actually our input. It's going to go into the machine. And when we find f of 4, that means we're replacing x with 4. Okay? And then we're just going to do the math. So we're going to do like we stated above, multiply by 3 first, and then add 2. Okay. So 4 is our input. We get 14 as our output. Okay. All right, so that's just the notation and what it means. So now let's look at some more examples here. So we want to evaluate the following expressions given the functions below. Okay, so the first thing that we're being asked to do is find g of 4. Okay, so we have to choose one of these 4 equations from this bank right here to use. Well, if we're being told to find g of 4, then we need to be using g. Okay, and then we're just going to substitute 4 in because that's what g of 4 means. G of 4 means substitute 4 in for x. Okay, when we do that, we're going to multiply by -3 first because that's our order of operations. And then we're going to add 1. So G of 4 equals -11. And that's your answer. Okay. Let's look at the next one, h of -2. We have to pick our function, and we're going to use h because it says to use h in the question. So h of x is 12 over x. That is our rule. And we're going to substitute -2 in for x. And then just calculate. 12 divided by -2 is -6, and that's our answer. The last one, f of -2, we have to go and find the function we're going to use. We're going to use f because it says f of -2. And we're going to substitute -2 in for x because that's what that notation means. You're going to want to be really careful here because when you square a negative number, you get a positive. That means just to take -2 times -2, which gives you 4. And then we add 7 and get 11. Okay, so this is the first type of problem that you're going to see on your homework. Okay, we have 2 other types that you're going to see as far as function notation goes. Okay, so let's look at the second type. So we're going to translate the following function notation into coordinate points, okay? So just a quick review here. When we're talking about ordered pairs, we write our ordered pairs as x comma y, knowing that x is the input and y is the output. Okay, that's just a review. Okay, so you might notice that the questions in this section look very similar to the answers in the last section. So G of 4 equals -11 from right here. You're now showed f of 1 equals -2. So we're just taking this expression and writing it as an ordered pair. Okay, so we want to write it as x comma y. So we need to be thinking which one is the input, which one is the output. And we can look back up at this example that we did above. G of 4 equals -11. Well, what was the input? Was 4 the input or was -11 the input? Well, 4 was the input. That's what we plugged into our function. So when we look at f of 1 equals -2, 1 is our x or our input, and -2 is our y value or our output. So if we go to write this ordered pair, it's just 1, -2. H of 3 equals 12. 3 is the input, 12 is the output. The ordered pair is 3, 12. G of -4 equals 2. Input is -4, output is 2. The ordered pair or the point is -4, 2. Okay, so that's all you're being asked to do there is just to take that expression and write it as a point. This is important. You will be asked to graph things later on in the unit from function notation, so you need to really understand what represents x, what represents y. All right, one other type of question. Okay, so we are now looking at f of -2, f of 2, f of 5, but we don't have the equation for f of x. We have a graph that's labeled f of x. So we have to use this graph. Okay, so think about what we were doing when we were calculating. We were using -2 as our input. -2 was our input or our x value. Okay, so what this is asking you to do is to find y when x is -2. Okay, so find y when x is -2. So we're going to go to our graph and we're going to find where x is -2. And we're going to trace it up to the point on the graph. Okay, this is the point -2 comma what? Well, this is the point -2, 4. So that means that f of -2 equals 4. Okay. Find f of +2. That means find y when x is 2. Okay, so I'm going to go on my graph. I'm going to find where x is 2. I'm going to trace it to my graph. And this is the point 2 comma -2. Okay, so when x is 2, y is -2. The last one that we're going to look at is f of 5. So this is asking you to find y when x is 5. Okay, and you don't have to write these sentences down. This is just for notes. So when you go back to look at it, you understand what we're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to take where x is 5. I'm going to trace it down to my graph. This is the point 5, -1. So f of 5 equals -1. Okay, we're done. Homework, you have the 3 types of questions: where you're evaluating, where you're writing as an ordered pair, and when you're evaluating using a graph.